Welcome to the Real Estate of Life with Kevin Rouse and friends. And this week I have another friend with me. We're going to talk about renovations. I have brought Houston Vintage Homes own Tyron McDaniel to talk about all the different ways, creative ways to do renovations. You won't want to miss this.
Support for this program comes from the Digital Broadcasting Network, presenting podcasts and web series from everyday people who have an extraordinary passion to make the world a better place.
All right. Thank you again for logging in and listening to the Real Estate of Life with Kevin Rouse and friends. I start every podcast with thanking you for taking the time out for listening to our podcast. We've just had such a good response to this, and I don't take it lightly. So I know some of you might be saying, oh, hey, every podcast you start off with thanking everybody, but I'm truly appreciative because a podcast is a choice. You don't have to listen to it. And so all the emails and text and instant messages I get, I really do appreciate you doing it. And I found out here recently that I have listeners all over the country. I've been getting some emails from quite a few folks that don't live in the Houston or Texas market. So again, I appreciate it. So I wanted to talk about, and I've been wanting to have this guy on for quite some time, really good friend of mine. And I want to talk about renovations. So some of you know that I have been in real estate. I've mentioned it a couple times, 20 years now. And I love brokerage. I love marketing property. I like doing brand management, things of that nature. But I'll be honest with you. I hate renovations. I hate them. I'm maybe it's because I'm not a detail-oriented person. I don't like dealing with the contractors and all that kind of stuff. Now, I've done renovations before. I've managed contractors, but it is not the funnest part of real estate. And so I wanted to talk to someone that not only loves it, but finds so much joy and passion in it that it is almost like his calling. I think it truly is a part of his calling. And so I want to introduce to some, this is what the pastor say in the black church, introduce to some, present to others, Mr. Tyron McDaniel from Houston Vintage Homes, a good friend of mine. How you doing,
Thanks
sir?
for having me, Kevin. Appreciate it, man.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So Tyron and I been known each other for a long time. Some of our phone conversations probably could be podcast episodes in and of themselves.
Exactly.
And so he has, well, you know what? I'm introducing you. You're a real estate investor, fix and flip, buy and hold, things of that nature. But how did you get into real estate? Because I know the story, but tell the people.
Got you. I think the easiest way to explain is I, like a lot of people, was one of those people that kind of maybe saw a late night infomercial or something like that. And that was the genesis, that said, man, there's money in real estate. Outside of that, when I think back over life now, not being 21 again, I can look back and think that it was always something I was interested in. Mm-hmm. When I first got a license, me and my buddies would drive around and I'd go show them houses that wasn't in Fifth Ward. I grew up in Fifth Ward, so we drive Southwest Houston because I found
that's the
this
nickel
house.
For those of you that are
right.
not familiar.
Houston. We drive around to other parts of Houston to go look at houses. This is when I was 16, 17 years old. So when I look back, it was always going to be something that I initially did. But the genesis, when I started to seek information, start to learn and educate myself, was watching a late night infomercial, which led to eventually finding a book in a bookstore, and then start taking classes. And so it was kind of like a serendipitous journey. One thing led to another.
Gotcha. And so for those of you out there, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're not licensed, right?
Not at this time.
Right.
No.
And so Tyron has a full-time real estate business, and he's not licensed. So people always ask me, do you need a license to be a real estate investor? And so I have an answer to that question, and I say, no, you don't. You're living proof of that, but I would ask you the same question. For those of you that might ask, before we get to the renovation part, do I need a real estate license to be in the real estate business, as far as real estate investment business? What'd you say?
Yeah, I think, to me, it's more like, is it right or wrong? One person, may have on a jacket versus another person has on a short sleeve shirt. Neither person it's not a right or wrong. It's more or less what's best for the situation. real estate is, in the context of how you practice, is a passion of yours, and so you live out that passion as a licensed agent. You don't have to get a license to become a builder or investor, but if you want to be a real estate agent and practice real estate as a person who helps people within that capacity, then you want to go out that route. I have had a license in the past, but again, I figured out, what do I really want to do? And once I figured out how I want to practice in real estate, it didn't require a license. So if you have enough foresight to really understand how you're going to use real estate, whether this is a full-time endeavor, as it is for Kevin and myself, or is it part-time, is it just a piece of your portfolio? To me, figuring out that first allows you to now be in a position where it figures out a lot of other decisions that if you try and micromanage the decision without knowing what your end goal is, it's more difficult.
So, in full disclosure, his wife is licensed as well, but
Exactly.
I would say, knowing them, that I don't know that he uses her license all that much, other than on the sales side, you identify your deals, just old school boot walking.
Exactly. Like,
Right.
you don't even, yes, having an agent is advantageous, and, you don't really, in my opinion, a good agent like Mr. Rouse doesn't cost you as a person who utilize their services any money. They create more value than what their commission is. And such is the case for my wife and many practitioners of real estate. But you can operate outside the context of having an agent and build a tremendous business, because real estate is very dynamic.
Yep.
Most people just look at real estate as, hey, I need a house to buy or I need a house to rent, and that's it. But there are a lot of moving pieces. And so I guess the ultimate point, Kevin, back to the license or not, is more so than figuring out whether you need a license, is figure out what you truly want to do with real estate. What part of the role does it play in your financial portfolio? And once you figure that out, it's very easy to determine if you need a license.
So with that being said, again, we're going to get to the renovations. What did you figure out? So what is real estate, because I know the journey
Sure.
of trying to figure it out, but what did you ultimately say, okay, this is the space I want to play in?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, before even making that decision, I figured out how I want my life to be orchestrated.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured out that,
It's the real estate of life, y'all. It's the real estate
Exactly.
of life. So he about to talk about some
Exactly.
life. Listen up.
It's very synonymous to renovating a house, though, Kevin.
Mm-hmm.
When we go into a property, the first thing we do is solidify the foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I had to figure out the foundation of how I wanted my life to operate. And within doing that, I figured out what role real estate was going to play. So for me, right now, where I am at the time when I figured out when I figured out the way that we're going to operate real estate, which is how we operate now for the last 3 years, I love where I grew up at. And I felt like I had a vision for the area I grew up in and areas I had an affinity for. And more importantly, when I look back over my life, I remember saying, man, all these great things are going to happen over here. You can read it. It's in books. It's public information. And I just said, I want it to happen, but I want to be a part of it. It's not going to happen without me putting my fingerprint on it, if you will. So at 40, I said, hey, it's time to put that into action. So I felt like I made some decisions prior to being 40 that allowed me to, at 40, make the decision to focus on real estate in this capacity, and for the most part, zero, get everything else out of the way.
Got you. So in doing that, I've witnessed, created a business in which you are a very active real estate investor, not only in Fifth Ward, but I would say, and for those of you that are not from the Houston area that listen to this, Fifth Ward is one of our inner loop, close to downtown areas that was traditionally an African-American neighborhood. For those of you that are familiar with the rap group,
Ghetto Boys.
Then they made Fifth Ward, at least
Pretty
outside
good.
of Houston, they
Right.
made Fifth Ward. They put them on the map, just like NWA put Compton on the map back in the day.
Exactly.
So they're our NWA for those hip hop heads out there.
There you go.
For those that don't know what we're talking about, don't worry about it.
There
But anyway, Fifth Ward, just like a lot of areas I've talked about in previous podcasts around the country that are urban core areas, is going through a gentrification, both in not only racial gentrification, economic gentrification as well. And so you have area Fifth Ward, Third Ward that are closer to downtown. All the wards, we only have 5 here in Houston area. Oh, sorry, 6 here in the Houston area. But just like in Atlanta, where I went to college, a lot of the stuff that's close to downtown, urban core is becoming popular again, and so people are renovating. So Houston Vintage Homes, Tyron McDaniel, goes around, and when I say go around, I mean literally goes around and walks neighborhoods, knocking doors, trying to find owners. I'm explaining what you do. You explain what you do. What you do?
Yeah. How do you? One of the reasons I practice where I practice is because I feel comfortable there.
Okay.
I understand the people there. I grew up there. So it's not foreign to me. So it's not. Yeah, I go to the store there because, you know what I mean? This is South Park. You know what I'm saying? This is what we do,
Right.
So it's not even a marketing thing for me. I don't really door knock. I just do what I do. This is the South. We wave, we say hello. And so my mom just said, hey, be nice to people. And so just by virtue of that, a lot of good things happen, so it's not necessarily with that capacity that we practice. But what I do is, I'm in the neighborhoods where I want to have an impact, so I drive them. Daily basis. So there's not a street within the 610 loop that I probably haven't driven 3 times, like literally driven that street up and down it and can tell you what was there this year, 5 years ago, what the wood looked like, what kind of 2x4s or 2x6s, because, that's my research and canvassing. So, I just take a real grassroots approach because these are areas. So if we're renovating a house here, and it's 5 o'clock on a Friday evening or I'm going to walk the neighborhood so that I can experience what the family's going to experience that lives there. I'll wake up in the middle of the morning at 4 o'clock and go drive and sit on the porch of a house that we're renovating or that's framed up, because if I expect a family to live here, I could at least come in and experience and make sure that I'm cognizant of what it takes. And so, I just literally have people that will come and see a house and say, hey, I see you over here all the time. What's, this house down in the street, or I remember what this house looks like before. So it's not necessarily a strategy per se, but it's just kind of sort of how I operate, if you will.
Gotcha. So you kind of explained, how you identify properties. That was the reason for that question. So as it pertains to the subject matter of this particular podcast, renovations, the reason I wanted to bring you on is because you like, as you put on Facebook all the time, you like ugly house. Not ugly. What you always put? Yeah, the houses nobody wants.
Yeah, old raggedy houses.
Old raggedy. That's what. Old raggedy. That's what. He likes old raggedy houses. I wanted to make sure you need to put that a tagline.
There you go.
I like old raggedy houses. And so what Tyron does is he finds, and when I say they're raggedy, folks, they are raggedy, right?
Raggedy. Like your grandma say, raggedy. Yeah.
I mean, like leaning, termite infested, leaning over. But and so
they really do look like that.
Oh yeah, man, yeah.
Right.
Ruse Mizzen, he does, and you can find him Tyron McDaniel on Facebook and friend him. So because he puts up videos when he's walking neighborhoods and walking houses, and he'll walk a house and he'll shoot the camera up and there's no roof, or it's
ain't got no roof.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just hard.
Right.
I mean, they look horrible, and then you'll see the after, and you're like, that's not the same house. Oh my God.
Right.
So it's like an HGTV. Episode, but not in 30 minutes, because it don't ever take 30 minutes, by the way.
Right.
So I wanted you to talk about, though, a lot of investors, commercial investors and real estate investors listen to our podcast. And so I wanted you to kind of take us through the process. Once you identify one of those old raggedy houses from a renovation standpoint, kind of give us some steps as to, what that process is of beginning the renovation, identifying contractors, pricing. I know you do a little bit different of a methodology, but
Gotcha.
Just kind of give us a general sense.
So I think the biggest thing, so for example, before coming here today, I had a property, and initially this house started out as a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, 892 square foot former trap house, if you will.
That's another hip hop reference out there.
Urban vernacular, if you will.
Go to urbandictionary.com, urbandictionary.com, look up Trap House. Okay,
there you go.
Right. We try to give you information on the real estate of
go.
life of Kevin Rouse. Mr. Producer is falling out laughing right now. But, we can't help it. Go ahead. All right.
So needless to say, but in its current iteration, it's now 4-bedroom, 2.5-bath urban bungalow.
So you changed it from 1-1 to
exactly.
A 4-2.
Okay. So we went in, to your point. So we actually to kind of walk you through that whole process. So it started out as a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, trap house, just regular shotgun house. Mm-hmm. It's now 4-bedroom, 2.5-bath, what we call urban bungalow, but basically a house you walk in, big open living and dining that's open to a big high ceiling kitchen, island kitchen with real nice stainless steel finishes, and four bedrooms, which is huge within the inner city loop because most houses are 3 bedrooms,
right.
as you know. So with this house, generally when you're doing a renovation, obviously you want the end goal of what you're going to do, and that makes it easy. The biggest challenge with inexperienced people doing renovations is they change so many times from what they originally started with to what the end product is. And when you're hiring a service provider and you continually change what the scope of work is, then it takes longer, it costs more. So going into a project, the biggest thing is get very clear on what you want the end goal is, and don't go to the different places like where you're buying granite, where you're buying paint, where you're buying these things, and then you fall in love with gray and we're going to paint white, or then you switch from white to brown or tan, and things of that nature. So that would be the biggest thing. And so what we do to ensure that we don't do that is I always find a more expensive example of a house that I'm doing. So when I found this house that was 4 bedroom, 2 bath, that I said this is what I want to design, it was based off a house that's probably $750,000. Now my house is only going to be $269,000, and that creates my design theme for my living room, dining room, and kitchen. Everything else is a byproduct of how many square feet. So that's the first part, is figuring out exactly what we're going to do.
So knowing the vision, exactly how you want this to look first before you even start doing anything else is most important. What's the end goal?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And so you identified the house. It was 1-1. You want to make it into a 4-2. I know that's what I wanted to make it into. I found an example house. I got some pictures and colors and things of that nature.
Right.
So from there, and this may take you back to when you first started, how do I go from 1-1 to 4-2 from a identifying contractor standpoint, and what things do I need to kind of to think about?
So part of the thing with doing the renovation is you always have an idea of what your budget's going to be. So you have, so in this case, we knew exactly what we could spend on this particular property. In fact, we were going to do a 3 bedroom initially. But when we looked at how many square footage that we were going to add, it just made sense to make it a 4 bedroom because we weren't going to add any more square footage.
So you're saying you knew how much budget, I know what you're talking about, but I just want to make sure. So you said, hey, based on what I think I can sell this for, I think I can add another bedroom on here and still have enough budget to renovate and make profit that I want to make.
Sure. And to make it easy for people, we can definitely, it's more than, I can use the number. So, let's just say we paid $90,000 for the house. Well, with this particular house, because of how our business is structured, to add one thing, we start with the end in mind. So the question wasn't how do I make a 3 or 4 bedroom. The question was how do I create a product that its value would be $269,000.
Okay.
So what does a $269,000 house look like in this area? Based on that gave me a certain framework. It had to be at least 3 bedrooms. I saw that we could do 4 bedrooms in that same imprint. So that's the first thing we started with. Well, because of what we paid, $90,000, and then we just subtracted out how much does it take for us operationally from a profit and a covering that project perspective. How much does it take for us to do that? And that left the budget for what we could use to go into this particular property. Maybe you're an investor, you got a certain amount of financing. They may tell you, hey, listen, you have a certain percentage value that your project, or what we call LTV. And so if you're buying a house for 40 and they only are going to lend you 130, well, you automatically know I got 90,000 minus fees or whatever. So get the vision and then take that vision and make it, when you can, fit within your budget, if you will. Well, it has to fit, or otherwise you're going to go above budget. So take the vision, fix it into whatever the number of budget that you have, and we can kind of talk about how do you figure out that number.
That was going to be my next question, is how do I figure out my budget?
Sure. So one of the things I tell people, now, if this is just, a lot of people are affected right now and need maybe just work done, it's a small amount, that's one.
And to that point, by the way, we mentioned this before we went on the air, this is the same process, what he's about to talk about now, budget-wise, for the folks that are affected by the storm. So you're still trying to, you have to have a vision. Your vision might be to just make it back to what your house looked like before, or you might want to take this opportunity to do a couple of upgrades. But coming up with a budget is the same whether you're doing fix and flips or for the storm. So I just want to say that.
Well, because even if it's your house, you still got, they don't have that tile anymore.
Right.
Sheetrock costs more now than it did.
When they built the house,
you still have to pick, all the different finishes. What will these things look like? So all that still comes back into it. But from a pricing perspective, one of the first things, especially when you get into substantial projects that I would say are 5 figures, deep 5-figure projects, I always recommend Go to Home Depot or your local home improvement store and invest 2 hours walking every aisle. Now, I've shared that with you.
I did that, and y'all know, I did it. I wrote down stuff. I did exactly. He told me to do the exact same thing. I did it, and it is helpful. I do know better now what my numbers are when I'm looking at. If a client asks me, how much you think this sheetrock's going to be, and I can kind of say, oh, well, sheetrock was blank per sheet, whatever. So it does, or it was drudgery for me. Because again, that's not my favorite thing to do, but I did do it. All right, I just want to let you know I'm not just a client. What was the old? Right. I'm a client or whatever.
Right.
I know. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The reason why though I share that with people, and most people don't, Kevin. Mm-hmm. But the people that do always report back that they did. Mm-hmm. And I think that's always a barometer of how information is executed. Now, is the response you get back. But there's not a person I've told to do that exercise that's done it and didn't report back to me, because the first thing it creates with a project of this nature is, number one, a renovation project is very emotional. So you're going to be up, you're going to be worried. It's going to be something that we call, literally you're going to wear it around your neck. It becomes a necklace till it's complete. Mm-hmm. Well, investing 2 hours at your local home improvement store is going to allow you to be able to do the project with a lot more peace. It allows you to actually negotiate from a point of strength, as much strength as you can have, not being an expert in this field. Primarily because if you're getting a fence done, I was talking with someone that needed a fence done today, and they say, well, how do I know a good price? I said, well, go to Home Depot and you'll see pickets cost $1.50 to $2. Mm-hmm. So the question is, how many do you need, 100 or 300? Once you identify how many you need, you know how much the material costs are. Mm-hmm. So if you can separate material costs roughly, and then you get a quote, so let's say you need $800 worth mm-hmm. of pickets, you get a $2,000 quote. Roughly, you're investing somewhere around $1,200 in labor, and that may be a great price. That may be an exorbitant price. But this now gives you some framework, so you're not shooting in the dark when you have some semblance of what the material costs are.
And so another testimony to that, my roof was damaged during the storm, and so I'm having to get a new roof. I've gotten 2 quotes already. They come in relatively close to the same, but I remember Tyron saying, go find out how much materials are. So I'm trying to get pricing on. I forgot what the
squares.
The squares, yeah. How much per square? Because both of the quotes tell me how many squares that they're quoting as well. And so in the quotes, I have a large roof line. Some quotes have been like mm-hmm. 17 to 20 grand, and I'm like, man, I don't think squares are
exactly
are that much. So
exactly.
I'm not saying it should be free
exactly.
at all. I don't mind paying people, but I'm not negotiating from a place of strength, because I didn't go do that exactly. that exercise. So,
and it's not that you don't want the service provider to make money,
right? No, absolutely not.
And to your point,
but you don't
the
want
reason
to
why this exercise, yeah, exactly. Well, right. You want to see. I think that most people just want to know,
right?
You know what I mean? Like when you go and buy a Rolls Royce, you know that you can get another vehicle for a fraction of that,
right.
But you know exactly what you're paying for, and you
right.
agree to pay for that.
Right.
When you purchase a Gucci shoe, you know
mm-hmm.
that you can get another shoe for. So people don't
Y'all
have
can
a
see
problem.
Tyron's tastes are really expensive. Go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, I think
yeah,
exactly. But it just drives home the point that people don't have a problem paying for what they know
right.
they're getting. And so that's my thing. This exercise just helps you identify, because if a guy comes in or a trade comes in and say, hey, it takes XYZ dollars to repair your home with sheetrock, but you don't have any idea how much labor is nor how much materials are, then how can you negotiate?
Right.
You're just going with the lowest price.
Right.
And
right.
generally, lowest price, you get what you pay for.
Right.
Which creates headache in these type of projects. So 2 hours invested in your local Home Depot will generally average out to probably an extra hour or so every night of sleep that you get, because you have a little more peace.
And that's one part of coming up with the budget. The other part is identifying contractors.
Exactly.
So tell me about that, how you've gone through that, or what you suggest.
Sure. So for our needs are a little bit different than what the average person who may be renting a home maybe, which generally I use a different type of contractor mm-hmm. just because of the nature of the project. It's larger and things of that nature. I always tell people first and foremost, start with referrals, because if you have a referral, there's no greater person to do business with than someone who has an affinity for you and the person who may have referred them to you. So that's the first thing you start. And then once you move outside of that, or you need more areas of specialization, what I've done is I go to projects all over the city when I'm driving and I see a group of guys on a project. hey, I go and introduce myself. And I just asked, and what you find is a lot of people enjoy what they do. Even the guy who's picking up trash sees the beauty in preserving the planet. So most people will love to explain to you more about what they do if you go and ask questions and allow them to share it with you. So that's how I find a lot of contractors. I see them working on a site, say, man, this is amazing trim work you do. How long you been doing this? Or, I've used broken Spanish or English or whatever dialect we need to figure out. And so, utilizing grassroots research, like right now in Houston, a lot of families have been impacted by the flood. So, it would behoove you not to introduce yourself to other contractors that are in your area that you see that are doing work, because one, you can find out from that person how they do. And number two, if they're working in your area, that's a good thing, because generally if a contractor has time, like you call him today and he can meet you today or tomorrow, generally that's the wrong contractor because he doesn't have enough business to keep him busy. In a city like Houston, there's no way a good contractor has time to get to that's maybe, and we'll talk about this in a second. Sometimes people have a different level of, in my opinion, I think you gotta understand what's customer service. Because if you want a contractor who can answer your calls every time you call and update you on a daily basis, that's a great thing. And there are contractors that are set up to do that, but you probably aren't gonna wanna pay what it takes for that type of operation to do your particular project. So you got to figure out what kind of customer are you as well. So that's a part of figuring out the budget as well. Do you need a high level of communication or do you need a high maintenance project? Like, are you a high maintenance person? Also, the level of finishes you want. That's an important part. Like with the house I described, we call that a level 3 finish. So it's not the very highest, but that's one notch below it. So that means that the guy that I use for my flooring is probably a relatively expensive guy for the average person who's getting something just done in their house. Like you want to get laminate laid down. But if you want a rental finish, a level 1 finish, then, or if you have a substantially priced house, then maybe you want a level 3 guy. So the level of finish is important in determining price and helping you find the right type of contractor. The last component I'll say on contractors is, which kind of speaks to the previous point, but, with certain projects we do, Kevin, we look at the size of the contractor's business. For instance, generally we like a contractor that does the work. So if it's carpentry, I need a house or a room framed. I want a guy who's actually going to be on the job, maybe if it's a 5-day job, 2 to 3 times out of that 5 days, because he still works with his guys. He may have a guy or two. I found that for a lot of our projects, we want a guy that big. When we get to maybe a contractor that has multiple crews, the benefit for me sometimes is we're doing 5 or 6 houses, so I have scale. The flip side is that guy's way more expensive than the guy who still works.
Because he's feeding those crews.
Exactly.
Right.
So, and he's operating outside of the business, not in the business, so he has more time to focus on the numbers to run a more efficient business. Right. So, but
in the spreadsheet.
Exactly. So, so it's real important to understand what type of contractor do you need so that you know who you're looking for, so that you can now pick the right contractor based on all the right information.
So I did my homework, went to Home Depot. I got a good sense of pricing. I've gone and networked and found a couple of contractors, got a couple of bids, and I'm going to go ahead and kind of talk about negotiating a little bit. How do you mesh the two together? In other words, I found a contract I think I want to work with. I have a relatively good sense of what material costs are. How do I, and now I've gotten some bids from that particular contractor. Not how do I, I guess how do I negotiate or
what's the next step?
What's the next step?
Again, it goes back to how you are as a person. To me, what I always share with people, especially in real estate, but I share when you're only negotiating price, then there's so much more to a transaction than just price. Only amateurs negotiate just price. So once you got a couple of contractors, the thing you're going to want to do, and now this is where it becomes relational, is price is one component of that, but which contractor do you feel like when some go bad, you can be able to still coexist with and get through it? Because on any renovation project, it has to be like a rubber band. That relationship has to be at its normal frequency, if you will, undergo some tension and be able to get back to some semblance of what it was before. And so many times we have the rosy outlook only contractor. we picked this person where we, everything just looks rosy, but we hadn't considered they may not be around if we need our money back, or, or may not want to give us our money back, or, they're all these different variables, or, maybe I've seen renovation projects falter not because of the dynamics of the deal, but because of the personalities just didn't mix. The two people couldn't communicate regularly and see eye to eye, and so the project failed and stalled or went to attorneys and things of that nature. So yes, price is important, but when you got it down to a couple of different people, figure out it's a relationship. Who do I want to talk to 2-3 times a week? You know what I mean? I've literally picked different contractors because I felt like it would be easier for me to manage this project because I can work with this person easier than this other person.
Gotcha. And
that was an important component of the deal because this was going to be a long-term situation. So it's not just which contractor has the best price. It's which person can you coexist with over the scope of your project and get to the end, because that's the thing. It's not the price. You'd rather pay more in certain cases if you got to the end goal with less stress, strain, or struggle.
Right.
So it's the best person that's going to offer that overall experience, in my opinion.
So I've picked that person, and now someone might ask, because Tyron always messed with me and his wife. We're both engineers, and he said we were trying to engineer everything. We want to know how everything,
got an algorithm and a formula,
exactly, and we got to know how everything is done and stuff like that. But for those folks out there that are like that, and I've picked my contractor, how do I monitor if the work is being done right? Or, I don't know anything about framing.
Right.
I don't know anything about plumbing. I don't know anything about code. For every 6 feet, there should be a, electrical outlet,
right.
Things of that nature. Now, I do know that. That's the why I use that as an example.
Exactly.
But some people are out there going to be like, okay, I think I found someone I can coexist.
Right.
We got the budget right.
Right.
When I'm coming to check the job, how am I knowing, what's going on?
The best thing to do, one, on smaller projects, YouTube is a great resource and kind of educating yourself.
Yeah.
It can. You also got to temper that. I call it eating chicken. Some people don't eat skin. Some people don't eat. Certain pieces of chicken. You know what I mean. So you got to take whatever's nourishable for you and then throw the rest away. Excuse me. Same thing with information on YouTube and even information that you may disseminate or be exposed to at any different point. But I think you have to just kind of go out and look for great information. The second thing is. What was the question? I lost my point.
That's okay.
With
No,
the
I was
YouTube
saying,
thing.
Educating yourself. Now that you've selected a contractor, y'all got the budget. He's doing the work, or she's doing the work.
Right.
How am I determining whether they're doing a good job?
Oh,
or
okay,
not?
great. And here's the point. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Sometimes thoughts get away.
That's okay.
Because I knew what I wanted to say,
Right.
but I was
You
waiting.
got so
to say
much
the thought.
information up there.
There you go. Exactly. There you go. Boom, hit your boy. No, but one of the things I think that's a great resource where you could invest some money is in getting an inspector.
Yeah.
That
Phase
is
inspector.
exactly, especially when you have a project that has different facets to it. Like what we have now, where you have electrical, you have plumbing, you have sheetrock, you have carpentry, all these different facets. It's a wise investment of your time to get an inspector that can go through this process with you. And now you have some eyes. Now your contractor may be a little bit of more of a headache for your contractor because he's going to have someone that's more discerning, and that's another set of eyes that's going to be analyzing what's going to be done. But ultimately, and if you're going to do this, I would suggest letting your contractor know in advance, right?
Because they might act right if they want to act right.
Well, it just eliminates, and it's full disclosure. Again, it's a relationship, so you wouldn't want to introduce someone into the relationship without bringing other part, like surprise,
Right.
Like
going out on a date with somebody,
Right.
Y'all getting, and then my mama coming with us.
Right, yeah.
Well, wait a minute, you didn't tell me that. Yeah,
Exactly.
You didn't tell me that. Come on. Right.
Oh, it's a 2-seater.
Yeah, exactly.
But so an inspector is a great resource because, again, it will allow that added layer of protection. The other thing about an inspector is because they're not as emotionally attached as the person whose project it is, they can keep you balanced because a lot of times, within the transaction, what happens is the interpretation of right.
That's true.
Or,
especially on certain types of trades.
Exactly.
Right.
Depending on what, is it really done? Well, yeah, it's done, but no, that ain't right and different. So a lot of times the inspector can head off situations that could become a situation just because of different people's interpretation.
Yeah. So real quick, I have a commercial client right now that I negotiated a restaurant lease for. It's a second generation restaurant, meaning that the space was already a restaurant, and they hired a contractor who was very, very personable, good, had experience, and the contractor introduced them to a designer to submit to the city to get their permits. We signed the lease in February. It is now September, and they're still not open. And one of those reasons is, one, the city in Houston does take a long time, but it don't take that long, is the contractor, client, designer relationship is everything that Tyron just mentioned about that tension, that rubber band. Started off good, got stretched, recently almost broke, and so I had to get back involved and try to assist in trying to help people with communication. But I say all that to say that I've told them that they need to hire a commercial inspector or someone that can come in and look at the work that has already been roughed in to make sure, because everybody's mad at each other right now.
Exactly.
And you don't want the contractor just to close everything up and say, forget it.
Exactly.
It's gone.
Exactly.
It's gone. So it is worth the money. People don't like spending money, especially some of the investors out there. They want to get the stuff done as cheap as possible. But there's a saying in my wife's family that bought wit is better than taught wit. When you pay to learn a lesson, you learn it way better than me just teaching you.
Bought wit versus taught wit.
Yeah.
I consider, for me, peace of mind is big. Right. And so I think what I found is most people get stressed with renovations. Most people, it becomes, I found out with new construction, like couples building new construction, like that's a great, within those who separate or divorce because of financial issues, a lot of times you find out that building a new house had a lot to do with it. That blew me away.
This is the real estate of life. We talk about life on this.
Right.
Real estate has my very first podcast. I talked about real estate. Real estate has everything to do with life and life events, and I've seen the same thing.
Wow, exactly.
New houses, new construction, new custom construction can start the divorce on its starting place.
So, it's very important to, just have all these dynamics worked out at the end of the day.
So as we kind of move towards a close here, I've heard a couple things. I've heard definitely kind of educate yourself in materials pricing, basically, by going to Home Depot, Lowe's, or your home improvement stores, YouTube, things of that nature. How to identify a contractor who you feel comfortable with. As well, how do I make sure that the contractor's not taking advantage of me through inspection and things of that nature? Are there any little tips you could offer that are not necessarily readily available that you had to learn yourself? Like, oh, you know what? This is something that everybody needs to know. So, for instance, as an example, when people buy apartment complexes, older apartment complexes, I learned from a client experience that they should always get the sewer lines cambered. Because a lot of those sewer lines are broken under the foundation, right? So that's not something that's in any book anywhere.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Every time I've had a client do it, they found a break.
Right, wow.
And so that has saved them money either in negotiations or they at least know going in. So that's not something that you would know. So are there any one or two things out there that you would say that that are not?
See, that's so good. It's like, man, what can you do to?
And let me also say this while he's thinking that, Tyron has selected houses that are craftsman houses. That's kind of his specialty. Houses built on pier and beam foundations. And as he's told me, the reason he does that is because you can get to everything. Because they sit up, you can get, if you need to fix the foundation, you can. He hasn't chosen a lot of slab. I'm sure you've done some slab, but
I think that's a great tip because historically, we've at least here, a lot of people say, I want me a brick house on a slab. And Houston just underwent a major flooding where people took 3-4 feet of water. And Kevin, I have a house literally that is the house next door took 3 feet. My house, because it's on pier and beam, that extra 18 inches to 2 feet, like you couldn't even tell it rained.
Wow.
2 houses over, they took 4 feet, and it's probably $45,000-$50,000 worth of work. So that one thing said, man, you need to give more respect and credence to houses that are on pier and beam. So I would say consider houses that are pier and beam. If historically you're building a house, you're finna look at towards new housing, consider those if you're in an area where safety or flood may be a concern.
All right. So with that, we just want to give you a primer of renovations, things to think about. I'll have Tyron back on to maybe get into some more detail as to the nuts and bolts of cost and pricing and things of that nature. But just wanted to have him on and tell them how to get in touch with you.
Best thing is, we're on House. We're on social media, Instagram, Facebook. Tyron McDaniel or Houston Vintage Homes is on House and Facebook as well.
HoustonVintageHomes.com. I think you have a website.
Yes, HoustonVintageHomes.com.
As well. So I want to thank you guys for listening. I want to thank Tyron for coming out.
Thanks for having me out.
Yeah, made him wait a little bit out in the
Real
lobby.
estate life.
I kind of big timed him a little bit, made him wait out there, make it seem like I got a big, huge studio. I want to thank Mr. Producer again. We're shooting this. I actually have a set. And for those of you that are watching on the video, go to channel713.com, watch the video, because now I got a TV behind me with the logo. So you can see Tyron's fly cap and my good looking self, all that kind of stuff. So, hey, again, thank you guys for listening, and I will see you next week. If you have a question about anything that we've talked about on the Real Estate of Life with Kevin Riles, a real estate question or a life question, no matter what, email me at kevin@kevinriles.com. Again, that's kevin@kevinriles.com. I'll get it. I'll make sure that I respond to you via email, but also I want to kind of collect these answers so that I could help everyone else. So again, kevin@kevinriles.com.